Hey guys, today I'm going to share with you the story Finally Something Mysterious, The One and Onlys by Doug Cornett. Paul Marconi's town of Bellwood is eerie, but not all that exciting. There isn't much for an 11-year-old to do. Fires are burning nearby. Paul's parents are obsessed with winning a bratwurst contest, and his best friend, one of the founding members of their Only Children Detective Club, the One and Onlys, is about to acquire a younger sister, sort of undoing their whole reason for existing. But then hundreds of rubber duckies appear on the lawn of poor Mr. Babbage without any explanation. Finally, something that Paul and his friends can actually investigate. Finally, something mysterious. Okay, so for all you that enjoy a little bit of mystery, this one's going to be for you. And it does have kind of a map of Bellwood. Chapter 1, the first weird thing. The weirdness in Bellwood all began when the smoke in the air in the ducks and Mr. Babbage's backyard. After they showed up, a lot of other weird things started happening. Mysteries, you could call them. Some of them were scratch your head and say, kind of weird. But a couple of them were big time weird. Stare up at the night sky and wonder about the meaning of life kind of weird. And hope that while I'm staring up there, a bird does not poop on me, because that would not be a good sign regarding the meaning of life. That kind of weird. The smoke was easy to explain. A wildfire was burning in a big state forest outside of town. When the wind shifted the wrong way, all of Bellwood smelled like a campfire. The ducks in Babbage's yard were a different story. They appeared one seemingly normal Tuesday morning, scattered all over the grass. There must have been hundreds of them, their little yellow tails poking into the air, each duck with the same creepy look on its face. Eyes wide open and vacant, like empty garages, bill curved upward in a kind of lipstick manic smile. I could picture the moment Babbage discovered them. He looks out at his backyard as he drinks his morning coffee, then boom! His mouth gapes open, his eyes go wonky, his coffee mug drops to the ground. Crash! Splash! Duckies? Duckies! These were rubber duckies, the kind you take a bath with. Nobody could explain where they came from. None of his neighbors had ducks in their backyard, but Babbage's yard, overrun with ducks. A mystery. News spread quickly in Bellwood. A dog could barf up an action figure on one side of town, and before it was mopped up, people would be debating the finer points of canine digestion on the other side of town. I know because that actually happened. Don't believe me? Ask my dog, Ronald. But that's what you get for living in such a small, out-of-the-way place. And so when rubber duckies invaded Babbage's yard, everybody knew about it, and fast. By 10 in the morning, the One and Onlys, that's my two best friends and me, were racing our bikes up the cul-de-sac of Bellwood, cutting through backyards and trundling through woods, hoping to get there before the little visitors vanished. Shanks, Peephole, and I made the crosstown trek in exceptionally good time. Apologize to Miss Hoover's geraniums. May they rest in peace. And rolled up to a clump of stupefied Bellwoodians staring at the ducks with wary eyes. Mr. Babbage's dog, a little white yappy thing, was bouncing around the yard, growling wildly at the ducks. Officer Portnoy, who had just visited our 5th grade class on the last day of school to remind us about proper bicycle safety, was talking to Mr. Babbage at the edge of the lawn. Portnoy held a duck inches from his face. It looked like they were having a staring contest. The duck was obviously winning. Okay, One and Onlys, Shanks said. Time to gather clues. Paul, you go snoop on Mr. Babbage in Office Portnoy. See if you can overhear anything that might be useful. Peephole and I will get a closer look at these duckies. I strolled over and stood behind Babbage and Officer Portnoy, trying to appear like a normal, non-snooping kid. Well, Mr. Baggage, I heard Officer Portnoy say I'm stymied. Please, call me Lance Babbage, said nervously, smoothing the collar of his bathrobe and shifting his gaze from his transformed bike yard to the growing crowd of onlookers. Mr. Babbage was always very well dressed, and today was no exception. His bathrobe was scarlet and silky, and it went all the way down to his feet, which was clad in slippers made of some kind of animal fur. His thin black hair was parted perfectly to one side, and his thick eyebrows seemed to be combed. You don't think they're dangerous, do you? I heard him ask Officer Portnoy, his face tight with worry. Officer Portnoy shook his head and clapped Babbage on the back. They're not real ducks, he said in a reassuring tone. So, no need to worry. But Babbage did look worried. He flicked his eyes back and forth to see if anybody was listening, but luckily he didn't look down at me. He leaned closer to Officer Portnoy. He began whispering something, so I casually inched up behind them to listen. And normally I wouldn't pay attention to such things. It's just that it was so vivid, so real. In my dream, there was a horrible beast in my backyard, an enormous, ghastly thing. Babbage's voice was faint and wavering. It was trying to get in my house, you see, but I wouldn't open the door. Its breath was heavy, steady, almost like a machine. Chuck, chuck, chuck. The walls were rattling, and then I woke up, and I could have sworn for a second or two that I still heard it breathing, but faint, like it had already run away. And that's when I looked out the window and saw them. He nodded at the ducks. I called the police immediately. Didn't even go outside to look. I just had this spooky feeling about them. It must be some kind of sign, don't you think? Portnoy shrugged, never taking his eyes off the duckies. I'm afraid dreams are out of my jurisdiction. So I'm going to pause there. So, is it dreams becoming a reality? Or is it something else? Read to see if you can figure out this mystery.